Hi, I'm Maura. I was 7 months pregnant when I knocked on a hotel door, my wedding gift in hand, and heard my fiancé moaning my sister's name. He looked up and said, "I'm only marrying her for the baby." In that instant, something inside me shattered, but something fiercer woke up. I walked away, then walked back with a revenge they never saw coming. Before we dive in, when are you listening, and where from? Drop a comment. I read every word. The snow had started earlier than the forecast promised, a thin powder swirling under the street lamps as I eased my SUV down Riverside Drive. 7 months pregnant means every bump in the road feels like the earth trying to shake something loose, but the baby kicked in slow rhythm, almost as if he liked the ride. Whenever Adnan's name flashed on my dashboard, the little guy answered with a jab, as if he recognized the sound of his father's voice, even through Bluetooth static. Tonight, though, the phone stayed silent, and I filled the quiet by humming along with an old Motown station. On the passenger seat sat the memory box I'd worked on for weeks. Walnut sides, tiny brass latch, a felt lining already sprinkled with ultrasound photos, ticket stubs from our first game at Outson Stadium, and a letter I'd written in pen so blue it almost glowed. A gift before the wedding, a reminder that love lived in proof, not in promises. I told myself Adnan would tear up the second I opened the lid, or at least pretend to. Either way, I'd remember the moment. The Lakeside Inn rose at the edge of Mirror Pond, a lodge-style place Bend locals used for anniversary dinners or proposal weekends. Inside, cedar logs and a stone hearth swallowed the January cold. The lobby smelled like cinnamon bark and wood smoke, and a solo pianist practiced "Someone to Watch Over Me" with just enough wobble to sound charming. I balanced the box on my belly while greeting the receptionist, a 20-something in a cranberry sweater and chunky glasses. "Evening," she chirped, scanning the reservation screen. "You must be Mrs. Syed?" "Not yet," I laughed, adjusting my coat. "Soon. I'm surprising him." Her smile dipped. "He asked not to be disturbed." I held up the box. "This isn't a disturbance. It's encouragement." She tried to match my grin but couldn't quite swing it. Still, she handed me a keycard. Suite 214, top floor facing the lake. The elevator doors opened with a sigh. Inside, mirrored walls doubled the nervous tilt of my shoulders. I rehearsed a speech I'd practiced in the shower. "You made me brave, Adnan. You turned every what-if into a yes, please." I pressed my hand to my abdomen. "Your dad's about to cry, little man. Rate the performance." Second floor hallway, plush carpet catching my boots. I recognized my sister's perfume, amber and burnt sugar, lingering like a misplaced memory. Probably coincidence. Jody wore that scent to every event so people would ask, "What's that fragrance?" She lived for the question. When I reached Suite 214, the door stood cracked half an inch. A low laugh drifted out, then springs squeaked in a rhythm no lullaby could hide. My knuckles froze mid-knock. Another laugh. Deeper, Adnan's. Followed by Jody's syrupy giggle, the one she used when a camera was near. My palm pushed the door without my permission. Lamplight painted ivory sheets. A single tousled blanket. Two bodies knotted together. Adnan's head snapped toward me, eyes wide, dark hair damp. Jody flipped onto her stomach, lipstick smudged like war paint, whispering a curse too soft to catch. The memory box slid from my arms, struck the hardwood, burst open. Ultrasound photos fluttered like wounded moths. One landed at Adnan's heel. He didn't move. No words found me. Air vanished. I stepped back into the hallway so fast my shoes squealed. Behind me, Jody gasped, "Maura, wait!" Her voice cracked on the second syllable. She sounded more annoyed than ashamed. I kept walking. The door stayed open, their whispers tumbling into the corridor. My heartbeat drowned them out. I jabbed the elevator button over and over until the doors parted. Inside, Hotel Muzak chirped, "Here comes the sun, cruel and bright." I stared at my reflection, eyes too wide, mouth too calm, and wondered if shock could look like poise. The ride down lasted seconds, yet stretched like a bad sermon. Ground floor, ding. Lobby warmth, rejected me. I marched past the receptionist, through the glass doors, into the thin layer of snow that had become a sheet. In the parking lot light, the memory box lid hung by one hinge, ultrasound glossy side up. I bent, retrieved a single photo, its edges damp. "This changes everything," I whispered to the tiny silhouette in the picture. Snowflakes landed on the paper, dissolving into black dots. My breath fogged, then drifted away just like the night I thought I understood love. I turned the ignition, letting the heater push away the chill that clung to my coat. Wipers scraped a thin veil of snow from the windshield, and the dashboard lit up like an unwanted Christmas tree. Amid the glowing icons, Adnan's name pulsed. A new voice message. I watched the seconds tick, 001, woe 2, while my thumb hovered. Not yet. My hand drifted to my stomach, the baby's foot pressed against my ribs as if testing the walls of a home that might not last. I stared at the lake instead. Frozen in spots, rippling in others, it couldn't decide what state to keep. Neither could I. A month ago, Adnan and I picnicked under the McIntyre apple tree behind my duplex. He'd rested his head in my lap, eyes half closed against the afternoon glare. "I can't wait to teach our kid how to climb this tree," he'd said, pulling a blossom and tucking it behind my ear. "We'll build a swing right here." I'd believed every syllable. My chest tightened at the memory, vision blurred until brake lights ahead snapped me back. Enough. I tapped play. His voice filled the cabin, smooth as sales pitch. "Mora, listen," he began, unhurried. "I didn't mean for you to find out like that, but let's be honest, you knew I was only marrying you because of the baby." He exhaled, a sound too close to a laugh. "Look, Jody understands me. You were always just the plan." Papers rustled on his end. "I hope you'll be mature about this." Mature. As if maturity meant folding myself small enough to fit their narrative. Heat flushed my cheeks, yet my eyes stayed dry, frozen like the pond. The phrase "just the plan" looped until it lost meaning, then found a sharper one. All at once, scenes paraded. Adnan bragging to his friends that I balanced him, Jody joking at Thanksgiving that I'd finally given the family purpose, our mother patting my hand after that toast and saying, "Smart girls make practical choices." They'd been writing the script for months. I'd simply memorized the wrong lines. A horn blew behind me, jerking me forward. I slipped the car into gear and pulled onto the main road, tires crunching fresh powder. I ignored 3 unread texts from Adnan's cousins, probably damage control. Deleted without opening. My phone buzzed again. This time Mom's name appeared. I pictured her at the kitchen counter, phone wedged between shoulder and ear while she rolled buttercream samples for tomorrow's cake tasting. She lived for appearances, for small-town talk. I pressed decline. Seconds later, a voicemail landed. "Honey, call me. Big day tomorrow." I almost laughed. Some days are bigger than others, Mother. Highway lights streaked across the windshield, smearing into orange ribbons. 12 days until the wedding that now felt like a pending foreclosure. I slipped my ring off, dropped it into the cup holder, and focused on the mile markers sliding past. 3 weeks earlier came crashing back, the bridal brunch at Jody's house. French doors open to spring air, guests sipping mimosas while Jody clinked her glass. "To a marriage built on unexpected blessings," she'd chirped, looking straight at me, then squeezing my shoulder just hard enough to sting. Adnan joined the toast, his fingers wrapping mine beneath the table, too tight, as though warning me not to spoil the moment by asking what she meant. I'd forced a smile, telling myself sisters say odd things after champagne. Now I knew. Jody always knew. The subdivision entrance appeared sooner than I expected. Street lamps cast long shadows over mailboxes leaning from last week's windstorm. I rolled into my driveway, killed the engine, and sat, breathing in the leftover cold. Porch light off, no candles in the windows. Home felt more like a witness than a refuge. Inside, silence greeted me. I clicked on the hallway lamp, its glow spilling onto the garment bag hanging from the closet door. Satin and lace, preserved like a museum piece. Mom insisted we keep it sealed from stress. I stared at its plastic shroud, then at the phone in my hand. Another buzz, this time from an aunt reminding me about an RSVP. Delete. My thumb hovered over Adnan's contact. Block? Not yet. A trial needs a record. I hung my coat, kicked off damp boots, and shuffled to the foyer mirror. My face looked unfamiliar, cheeks paler, lips firm. Not broken, just reorganized. Let them taste their own cake, I muttered, palm resting on the rise of my belly. The baby fluttered, as if agreeing. Turning away from the mirror, I noticed flecks of snow melting onto the hardwood where the memory box had cracked open earlier. I hadn't realized I'd carried it inside. I knelt, collected the scattered photos, slid them back into their place, then clicked the latch. Tomorrow, I decided, the box would stay with me. Proof of truth, proof of life. Then I flicked off the light, leaving only the dim glow from the oven clock. Midnight blue seeped through blinds, painting stripes on the living room wall. I gathered the garment bag and hung it in the guest room closet, separate from everything else. Isolation suited it. Suited us all, apparently. As I passed the nursery door, I hesitated. The room waited, half-painted sage green. I'd finish it soon, yes, but not tonight. Tonight belonged to anger cooling into strategy. I crawled into bed, blanket over belly, phone on, silent. One last thought prickled before sleep claimed me. If I've been merely the plan, it's time to rewrite the blueprint. That sentence, half-built dreams, kept echoing while I lowered myself onto the little rocker wedged between the window and the crib frame. The nightlight threw a soft circle across the walls, turning the sage paint into muted moss. A pair of newborn socks, tags still dangling, rested on the changing table like tiny white flags. The crib lacked its final panel because Adnan never finished tightening the screws. He claimed the Allen wrench hurt his wrist. I pressed a finger through the gap, imagining the baby rolling toward the empty space. "You deserve better than this," I murmured to the stretched cotton of my shirt. "Better than them. Better than a half-hearted home." A faint flutter answered. Or maybe it was just my pulse beating through too many layers of fabric. The rocker creaked, summoning an older memory. 7-year-old me balancing a tray of gingerbread men while Mom staged another perfect Christmas tableau. Jody had dropped the platter earlier, crumbs everywhere, and Mom hissed that guests would arrive any minute. I swept the mess, glued frosting smiles back on, then posed beside Jody for the annual photo, her arms stiff around my shoulders, both of us grinning like cardboard cutouts. That picture still sits on Mom's mantle, the symbol of sisters who always stick together. Every December, I pretend not to notice the gleam of forced unity in our eyes. I leaned forward, elbows on knees, and reopened that particular Christmas in my head. My grad school thesis, a year of late nights, had lived on the family desktop for safekeeping until Jody used the computer and accidentally deleted the file, 3 days before submission. Mom brushed off my panic with a gentle pat. "Don't make a scene, Maura. Jody is sensitive." Sensitive, yet somehow immune to consequences. Sensitive, the magic word that turned my pain into noise. I blinked back to the present. The room smelled of fresh lumber and lavender detergent, scents that should mean arrival, not abandonment. I reached for the top drawer of the dresser and pulled out my phone, scroll hibernating through apps until I landed on voicemail, the oldest folder. One message stayed pinned for 8 years. I pressed play. My grandmother's voice crackled, thinner than I remembered, yet ironclad in intent. "Blood means nothing if it costs you your peace, honey. Don't inherit their silence." The recording ended abruptly, a small gasp at the end where she probably tried to say goodbye, but the machine cut her off. "Maybe it's time," I whispered to the dark. Thumb hovering over the screen, I almost texted Valerie, a lifeline from college who once argued I should patent my ability to hold chaos together, but saying it aloud would solidify the horror into something too sharp. I set the phone face down. "Protect the baby," a voice insisted. Another answered, "Expose the rot or it will find him anyway." The debate circled until my temples throbbed. I opened the laptop balanced on the crib mattress and drafted an email to Lakeside Inn. Subject: cancellation of Syed Penrose wedding. My fingers flew, listing breach of contract, emotional duress, fraudulent intent. I hovered over send. Not yet. Not like this. I highlighted the entire body, deleted it, and closed the lid. The house had settled into late-night hush, but my mind refused to settle with it. I stood, joints protesting, and padded to the hallway closet. On the top shelf, buried under baby shower bags, waited a scuffed shoebox smelling faintly of dorm room incense. I carried it back to the rocker, pried off the lid, and lifted the old handheld recorder I'd used for study interviews. Dust coated the buttons. The battery door hung loose. I rummaged for 2 fresh AAs from the junk drawer and popped them in. The red light blinked alive, steady and bright. "If they want a wedding," I told the quiet house, adjusting the microphone sensitivity, "I'll give them a performance." Morning crept in with the dry hiss of February wind against my kitchen window. I'd slept maybe 2 hours, but adrenaline can mimic coffee when the heart has a job. I showered, braided my hair into a neat crown. Jody once said loose waves made me look soft. Today, softness had the morning off. In 9:30, I pulled into Sunshine Bridal, the cedar-sided shop on Franklin Avenue that smelled of starch and rosewater. Through the glass, I caught my reflection. Pale coat buttoned over my belly, eyes a shade steadier than yesterday's. I walked in as if the world hadn't shifted an inch. "Mora!" The receptionist's voice pitched high, sugary. "Big day for final tweaks?" She gestured toward a row of dressing rooms draped in blush curtains. Before I answered, Jody's laughter sailed from the far stall. "Maggie, can we cinch the waist a touch? Maid of honor's gotta look snatched." The word echoed off crystal chandeliers, each syllable a smirk. I kept my smile polite. "Just a small adjustment," I told the receptionist. "Nothing anyone will notice, except me." She led me to a fitting area where my gown waited on a mannequin, lace shimmering under soft track lights. The seamstress, Mrs. Chen, bustled over, pincushion at her wrist. "What do we change, dear? Structure is perfect." "I'd like a hidden pocket sewn inside the bodice." I traced a spot just above my waistline. "About the size of a deck of cards." Her brows met in the middle. "For a tucking handkerchief?" "For something I need close," I said, lowering my voice, "just in case." I opened my purse enough for her to glimpse the small recorder, black plastic against silk lining. Understanding flickered in her eyes. Maybe she'd overheard one too many bridal breakdowns. Mrs. Chen nodded. "Give me 20 minutes." She whisked the gown behind a divider, scissors snapping like tiny birds. I wandered the showroom, running fingertips over veils and beadwork. Jody stepped out of her stall in a champagne dress, hugging every excess breath. She spotted me, eyes gleaming the way cats watch aquariums. "Brave of you to stick with white," she said, voice pitched for the clerks to overhear. "After everything." I steadied the hanger of veils beside me. "White doesn't preach purity," I replied. "It announces a beginning." Jody's mouth twitched. "We'll see." She pivoted, fabric swishing like a threat, and retreated to the mirror wall where she posed, phone held high, captioning her reflection, no doubt. While she fussed, I sketched the seating chart in my head. Who would sympathize? Who would rush to Instagram first? Who would shield a child's ears when the truth spilled? For each face, I plotted a move. Facts here, recording there, silence where guilt could echo. The wedding wasn't a ceremony now. It was chess, and I finally understood the board. A toddler in polka-dot leggings toddled up, eyes wide at my belly. "Is your baby a boy or a girl?" she asked. Her mother hustled, apologetic, but I crouched with effort. "Doctor says a boy," I answered. She considered this, then declared, "Your baby's gonna have a princess for a mommy." I smoothed a hand over the braid. "Or a queen," I whispered, earning her giggle before she skipped away. The words tasted right, less fantasy, more decree. Mrs. Chen returned, gown draped over her arm. "Pocket finished." She winked. "No one will see." I slipped into the dress. The new stitch lay flat, invisible but strong, like resolve itself. Just as I stepped from the platform, Jody sauntered past, phone pressed to her ear. Her stage whisper carried, "She has no clue what's coming." Oh, sister, if only you knew. I lifted the cathedral veil, the edge heavy with seed pearls, and draped it across my forearms. Its weight steadied me. I caught my reflection, a woman framed in ivory and intent. My grin felt sharp enough to cut tulle. I placed the veil back in its box with deliberate care, shut the lid, and drove home in silence. The city blurred outside my window, storefronts glowing amber against an early dusk, people moving through routines while I counted the cracks in my world. After dinner, I tucked the leftovers into the fridge, washed the plates, and turned on only the lamp by the couch. The apartment felt unusually still, like it knew something was shifting. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through old contacts until I found the name, Valerie N. Jameson. We hadn't spoken in 6 years. Last time I'd mailed her a baby shower gift and never got around to following up. But before husbands and weddings and adult estrangements, she was my roommate sophomore year, the one who bought me soup when I was sick and told a professor off for grading my paper unfairly. She always had a quiet fire in her. I hesitated, thumb over the green icon, then tapped. The phone rang twice. "Maura?" The voice was the same. Crisp, a little older maybe, but steady. "Hey, Val," I breathed. "I hope this isn't too late." "Not for you." I blinked fast, staring at the edge of my coffee table. "I think I'm being used," I said. "And I think it's worse than I know." There was a pause on the line, soft but thoughtful. Then she answered, "Okay, we're not panicking. We're preparing. You don't have to burn the house down yet. Just light a candle and see who scrambles for the extinguisher." A short laugh slipped out of me, shaky, but real. She got to it. "Did Adnan ever have you sign a prenup?" I thought. "Kind of. I mean, not exactly. He had me sign something at that clinic. I was getting an ultrasound. He said it was just paperwork for the insurance, something standard." Valerie's voice lost its softness. "Was he rushing you?" "Yeah. The nurse was waiting and he said, 'Just sign it, babe. I read it. It's just policy junk.'" "Maura." Her voice dropped. "That wasn't a prenup. That was a power of attorney transfer, financial and medical." My heart stopped. "Wait, you're saying he can act on your behalf, control your assets, possibly access your accounts. It depends on how it was worded, but it's not small." I pressed the phone to my ear like it could explain itself. "So, he has control over everything?" "Unless you undo it," she said. "And the sooner, the better. I can help walk you through the paperwork, but he cannot know you're aware yet." I sat there after we hung up, alone in that familiar living room, the baby blanket I'd been knitting tossed across the armrest, still half finished. The shame came fast and loud. I remembered when my online banking started forwarding notifications to a joint account. I'd shrugged. Convenience, right? I remembered when Jody joked at Thanksgiving, "Oh, please, Maura doesn't need a brain, she's got a baby now." Everyone laughed, including me. I remembered when I started introducing myself as Adnan's wife before using my own name. How had I become a supporting actress in my own life? I rubbed my temple, then stood and walked into the bedroom. The old jewelry box on my dresser hadn't been opened in months. It was one of those vintage wooden ones with ballerina hinges and a velvet lining that smelled faintly of lavender and thyme. Inside, tucked beneath tangled earrings and a broken brooch, was an envelope. Yellowed, faintly creased. The handwriting on the front was unmistakable, Grandma Elsie. I opened it slowly. Inside was her wedding ring, plain gold, slightly worn at the band. And a note in her cursive, "For when it hurts too much. Don't lose yourself to keep someone else comfortable. Love you always." I sank to the bed and stared at the ceiling. For a full minute I didn't move. Then I reached for my phone again. "Val?" "Still here. I'm in. Not just to walk away, but to gather everything. I want a trail. I want proof. I want my life back." She didn't hesitate. "Then let's get to work. But promise me something. I waited. Wait for the right moment. He'll expect noise. You give him silence, and then a thunderclap. After we hung up, I walked through the apartment, turning off lights. When I passed the hallway mirror, I caught my reflection. For once, I didn't look lost. I stepped closer, met my own eyes, and whispered, "This time, I don't disappear." 2 days later, I walked into the planner's downtown office like nothing had happened. Hair curled, nails polished, a latte in hand I didn't even sip. I smiled, nodded at every suggestion, and pretended I hadn't spent the night before installing surveillance gear in a bouquet. The room was light and airy, with cream walls and gold-framed inspiration boards filled with couples I didn't recognize. Jody had picked this place, of course. "We need luxury, not Pinterest," she'd told me. The planner, Isabel, was dressed like a Hallmark commercial, pastel blouse, watch that probably cost more than my mortgage used to. She glanced at her iPad and chirped, "Now about the honeymoon. Adnan and Jody already confirmed their Maldives stay. It's under their names, so I'll forward the final confirmation to them directly." I froze, just enough to feel it. Then I smiled, tilted my head. "Oh, they must have meant it as a surprise. That's so thoughtful." She blinked, sensing the shift. "You didn't know?" "No, but I'm sure they were going to tell me eventually." I stirred my untouched drink, the spoon tapping glass like a countdown. Inside, I was boiling. Not just because they planned a honeymoon I wasn't part of, but because this woman, this stranger, had clearly been in on it for weeks, helping erase me with a paper trail and polite smiles. I let her walk me through flower arrangements next, taking mental notes of every vendor, every contact, every receipt, smiling, recording, pretending I was still the bride, even if the world was treating me like a placeholder. Later that evening, after leaving the office, I drove straight to a quiet parking lot near a closed bookstore, the location Valerie had texted me earlier. A man named Ellis waited in a nondescript black car. He looked like someone you'd forget on purpose. Gray hoodie, average everything. "You Mora?" he asked. I nodded. He didn't bother with pleasantries. "This will pick up audio within 6 feet. No buzz, no echo. It's disguised as a brooch in your bouquet and a tiny pin stitched into the veil lace. You won't notice it's there, neither will they." I held both pieces in my lap. They didn't look like anything special, but when he played a sample clip through his phone, a woman reading a grocery list in a whisper, I felt a strange sense of power. He handed over a second device. "Playback recorder, just in case." At home that night, I practiced. I wore the veil in front of my bathroom mirror, bouquet in hand, repeating casual phrases out loud. It felt foolish at first, but then I leaned close and whispered, "You think I'm disappearing?" The playback caught it perfectly, even the tremor in my breath, and somewhere deep in my chest, I realized, you really can hear how hard you fight when no one else is listening. The next morning, a knock came at my door. A delivery. Small box. I opened it and immediately recognized the font, Jody's idea of branding everything like a lifestyle blog. Inside, new wedding invitations, thick ivory cardstock. Except this time, I wasn't listed as bride. I was listed as guest of honor. My stomach sank. That afternoon, I confronted her casually, like brushing lint off a sleeve. "Hey, Joe, got the updated invites. Small typo, huh?" She blinked, too slowly, then smiled. "Oh, that. Just a design error. Hope you don't mind." I returned the smile, almost gentle. "Not at all. It'll make what's coming even better." She paused, but only for a second, then tossed her hair like always and said, "Try not to embarrass yourself, okay?" That night, Valerie called again. "I have everything on file now," she said. "But Mora, don't jump yet. If you go public now, they'll spin it. Let them walk straight into the fire with their eyes wide open." I sighed. What if they try to block me from the baby's finances? Adnan's name is still on the accounts. Her voice was firm. "Then you make sure they never get the chance again." After the call, I stayed sitting on the floor in the nursery. I hadn't been in there for a while, couldn't bring myself to. The crib still had its protective plastic on the legs. In the corner, inside the drawer of a dresser I never used, I found the tiny pair of white baby shoes I bought the day after Adnan proposed. They were soft, simple, and still had the price tag tucked inside. I held them for a long while. Then instead of tossing them like I almost did, I carefully folded them into a silk scarf and slipped them into the lining of my clutch, the one I'd carry down the aisle. I whispered to no one. "You'll know what real love looks like. One day. I promise that." Just before midnight, I got one final message from Jody. "Sleep well. Tomorrow, you disappear." I stared at it for a long second, then replied with one word. "Promise?" Golden sconces bathed the chapel in honeyed light, warm enough to fool anyone into thinking this day was a celebration. My heels clicked down the aisle at a steady pace, not the measured glide of a bride, just the sure steps of a guest of honor who'd read the fine print and decided to annotate it. My dress was charcoal silk, floor-length modest neckline. No veil, no train, nothing to drag behind me except the weight of what they had done. Whispers fluttered like moths. "That's the sister, right? Why isn't she up front?" Jody caught my eye, tilted her head, and flashed that rehearsed pageant grin. Adnan studied the stained glass window as though Jesus himself might intervene on his behalf. They looked almost relieved I hadn't caused a scene at the door. Let them relax, I thought. It makes the next part sharper. During cocktail hour, a string quartet played lazy jazz while servers threaded between tables balancing champagne. I lingered near the French doors, letting the winter air cool my cheeks. That's when Omar, the best man, shuffled over. Bow tie askew, breath heavy with whiskey courage. "Mora," he muttered, eyes darting. "We need to talk." I eased him toward a shadowed alcove by the coat racks. "Everything okay, Omar?" He wiped a hand over his mouth. "They paid me to lie in court about who owns your condo. Said it was an investment gift from Adnan's parents. I signed an affidavit." His gaze, glassy with guilt, finally met mine. "Will you bury them with it?" The recorder pin in my lapel blinked once. "Thank you, technology." I gave him a calm smile. "I already started, but your honesty helps." He sagged with relief, swore he'd testify if needed, then stumbled off toward the open bar. Chessboard piece relocated. Across the room, Valerie lifted her phone, subtle as a wink. "Our signal. Live stream ready. Time to shepherd secrets into daylight." I took the stage under the guise of toasting my beautiful sister, microphone warm in my hand, Bouquet's hidden mic transmitting every heartbeat. "Funny thing about secrets," I began, voice steady, microphone feeding into house speakers. They echo louder than vows. Behind me, the projector screen flickered to life. First, a still frame of the Lakeside Inn hallway, then the grainy video. Jody's door cracked, her laughter, Adnan's voice clear. "I only married her because of the baby." Gasps rippled through pews. Someone dropped a glass. The shatter rang like a bell summoning truth. The next clip, Jody on a phone call, mocking my morning sickness. She's too tired to notice anything. Then Adnan again, bragging about consolidating my assets. Silence expanded until it swallowed the music. Chairs scraped. A few guests hustled their children toward the lobby. Adnan stormed forward, fury blotching his neck. Valerie stepped in, court order raised. "Advance another inch," she said evenly, "and this becomes criminal." He stopped. Jody bolted for the microphone, snatched it, voice shrill. "She's jealous! That baby isn't even his!" Her words ricocheted off stone walls. From the crowd, a voice, Omar's, cut through. "Then why does the paternity test say otherwise?" I'd sent him the PDF an hour earlier. Phones lit up as copies landed in inboxes across the room. Jody's face blanched. She swung at the mic stand instead. It clanged to the floor. Two ushers moved to steady her, but she shoved them away, satin skirt twisting like a net. Adnan's knees buckled. He collapsed into a chair meant for his mother, head buried in shaking hands. The projector froze on a final frame, my ultrasound photo, proof of life they underestimated. I retrieved the microphone, now dented but functional. "I was never here for a fairy tale. I told the remaining guests, voice carrying to the rafters. I came for the truth. People stared, some horrified, some nodding slow approval. In the back row, I saw the little girl from the boutique, mouth open, clutching her mother's hand. For her, and for my son, I kept my shoulders square. Valerie blocked Jody's exit. Security edged forward. Murmurs built into a low tide of judgment neither of them could outrun. I felt no triumph, only release. They thought the wedding was over, but I had one final gift to give before I walked out for good. I stepped back to the microphone, heartbeat steady, bouquet clutched in one hand, clutch purse in the other. The projector screen still glowed behind me, but now every eye in the room was fixed on whatever I would do next. Before anyone rushes for the exits, I said, voice clear, there's a small piece of housekeeping. I lifted a cream folder, embossed, notarized, impossible to ignore. This is an annulment notice signed and sealed this morning by the county clerk. Effective immediately. Murmurs surged. Adnan's mother rose, eyes wide. You can't. I can, and I have. I offered the folder to the officiant, who accepted it with trembling hands. Oh, and the joint account you've all been so interested in? I opened my clutch, withdrew a second set of documents. Legally transferred into an irrevocable trust for my child. Per state statute, funds moved before a fraudulent marriage can't be contested. Valerie's heels clicked forward, voice calm as a gavel. Code 108.721, she announced for the curious lawyers in the crowd. Fraud voids spousal claims. Consider this your financial exit interview. A ripple of stunned laughter broke out near the back rows. Someone actually clapped. A woman in a navy suit lifted her glass. She's got more spine than the entire groom's table, she said, not bothering to whisper. Adnan tried to stand, but looked as though the air had thickened around him. His mother turned to plead, yet I cut her off gently. No more excuses, ma'am. No more cover stories. We're done patching holes you pretend not to see. Doors at the rear opened, and 2 uniformed officers entered. Gasps pinged off stained glass. The taller one read from a sheet. Jody Carter, we have questions regarding falsified medical documentation and the sale of stolen property. Jody spun, panic etching lines through her foundation. That's ridiculous. Adnan told me. She pointed at him, but he stayed frozen, regret soaking his expensive tux. The shorter officer lifted a plastic evidence bag. Inside glittered my grandmother's gold ring, simple, unmistakable. Recovered through an online auction site, he said. Seller traced to Miss Carter's laptop. Jody shrieked, lunged toward Adnan. You said pawn it, pay the planner. Her voice cracked. Officers caught her arms, guiding her toward the side aisle. She kept screaming his name until the chapel doors clicked behind them and the noise shrank to a memory. Silence settled again, thick yet oddly peaceful. I faced the guests, ready to leave, when a child's whisper floated up. The same little girl from the dress shop, now standing on a pew to see over adult shoulders. She pointed at my clutch. Is that for your baby? I softened, knelt despite the ache in my lower back, and opened the purse. The tiny white shoes rested inside, pristine. I let her peek. Yes, I told her. He's the reason I chose to stand tall instead of stay quiet. The girl smiled, small and knowing, before her mother lifted her down. I rose and walked the center aisle one last time. Passing Adnan, I paused. He looked up, eyes rimmed red. Words failed him, mine did not. You didn't break me, I said, voice low. You exposed yourself. No need to slam. I pushed the chapel doors closed with a quiet firmness, the kind that means something is finished. Outside, winter sun hung low, snow glittering on railings. Valerie waited at the bottom of the steps, wool coat flapping in the breeze. She handed me a paper cup from the caterer's dessert table. Still want that cake, warrior bride? I sipped the chocolate mousse topping, tasted sweetness untainted by lies, and breathed in air that finally felt my own. Only if it's the kind that doesn't leave a bitter aftertaste. Behind us, the murmurs inside rose and fell like distant surf. but out here the street sounded calm. A car passing, wind in bare branches. Peace wasn't silence. Peace was choosing which noise deserved space in my life. We walked toward her car, snow crunching beneath our shoes, the little white pear in my purse tapping softly against the clutch frame. One chapter closed, trust funds secured, voices recorded, ring reclaimed. The story, though? It was just beginning. The silence afterward was louder than the wedding band's finale. It followed me home, settled into the hallway like new paint, and, for the first time in years, felt merciful. I slid my keys onto the counter, shrugged out of my coat, and breathed in the hush as if it were oxygen my lungs had been missing. Morning sunlight slanted through the blinds, dust motes dancing. I opened them wide, let January's pale gold flood in, then placed the tiny pair of baby shoes on the sill. White leather, untouched soles. The light warmed them until they almost glowed, a promise, not a prop. I cupped my belly. I thought that wedding would destroy me, I told the room, but it introduced me to myself. 2 days passed with no television, no radio, only the gentle thrum of the radiator and the occasional kick from my son. On Wednesday, Valerie called. Her voice echoed through speakerphone while I organized nursery paint chips. "Update," she said. "Adnan's attorney sent an inquiry. We filed no response, just forwarded the annulment and trust paperwork again." I pictured him scanning those documents, realizing every loophole had already been stitched shut. "Jody?" I asked. "Influencer sponsors pulled out, fraud investigation rolling, no jail yet, but bankruptcy and a civil suit from the ring's buyer will keep her busy." I didn't grin. I didn't need to. "Let the universe finish the rest," I whispered, and Valerie exhaled as if she'd been holding that same line in her throat. Late afternoon, I walked to the community center a few blocks away, the one with peeling mint green paint and a sign that read, "Single Parent Circle, Tuesdays at 4. Folding chairs formed a horseshoe. I took one near the back. A woman with sleepy eyes and a soft Tennessee accent leaned over. "First time?" I nodded. She smiled. "You walked out of your wedding alone?" I considered. "No. I walked out with my child's future." Something in her posture straightened. She squeezed my hand and we listened to stories of late-night feedings, court dates, and surprise strength. That evening, I found a letter tucked in my mailbox. Handwriting I recognized, my father's bold slant, my mother's tidy loops underneath. Just one line. "We watched the live stream. If you ever want to talk, the porch light is on. No apology. But a door, cracked open. Progress is sometimes as small as that. Back inside, I pulled the baby shoes from the window and set them into a new keepsake box. On the lid, I wrote in ink, Day 1. Not the day I lost everything, the day I refused to lose myself. The nursery still smelled of primer and possibility. I laid out storybooks on the dresser, taped swatches of sky blue paint beside sage green. In the corner sat the rocker, sanded, repainted, ready. I lowered myself into it, belly rounding outward, and watched dusk turn the window to a mirror. "I'll tell you the truth one day," I murmured to the child within. "Not so you'll hate them, but so you'll know that silence isn't strength. Speaking your truth is." Snow began to fall again, light as powdered sugar against the glass. Somewhere beyond the quiet, Adnan was confronting lawyers, Jody was drafting apologies no brand would ever post, and my parents were perhaps rehearsing the words, "We're sorry." None of it felt heavy anymore. Peace, the real kind, arrived with the hush of those flakes. No orchestra, no applause, just a soft landing for a heart that had learned to beat on its own terms. Sometimes the people who betray you the loudest are the ones who taught you to fight the quietest. Would you have walked out of your own wedding too, or stayed to keep the peace? Have you ever had to start over even while your heart was breaking? Tell me in the comments. I read every word.